Hey guys, this is Jaira, day 2 of Rush Ranch's virtual open house. Today's video is the blacksmith shop with Virgil, Dave, and my bestie Jordan. Enjoy.
Welcome to the blacksmith shop at Rush Ranch. And the blacksmith shop is basically all about the original type of metalworking, where basically you pound metal into shape. It first started back in the Stone Age when people found chunks of gold in a creek or something. They found that they could hit it between two rocks and flatten it out, make it into ornaments. And then from there went on to finding copper and forming copper in the Neolithic age, and then in the Bronze Age added copper and tin, and made bronze, and then the Iron Age, and then the Steel Age that we're in now after about 1850 when the open hearth furnace was made. Now we deal with steel, and steel comes in a bunch of different forms, but it all works pretty much the same way. You can pound on it when it's cold and get it to change shape if it's a mild steel, but that takes a lot of work. Okay, so to make it easier on yourself, what you do is you heat it up until it's red hot and then form it, because it softens up when it's hot. Now, the way that the blacksmith shop was such an integral part of the ranching and farming community back in the day was that if you wanted anything like hinges or latches, you pretty much had to make it yourself. And there wasn't any electricity out here. Basically the tools that you had to deal with were a coal fire forge like we see here. Get that stuff burning up real nice. This forge will get up to 2,400 degrees or so. It'll actually melt steel if you put enough air onto it. Put that in there. Give it some air every once in a while. But basically, you had to be able to make and fix things on site, okay, without the modern electrical power tools that we have today. It was kind of out of the question to run into town to a hardware store, because first of all, the hardware stores didn't have a lot of the stuff that we have now. If you go to Home Depot, you can find pretty much anything you want. But back in the day, a hardware store had maybe some rudimentary threaded fasteners, and that's about it. And so what happened is, it might be, in the days when you had to travel by horse or by boat, it might take you a day to get into town to get something, and then what you got wasn't really very valuable unless you could work it yourself. And so if something broke, like a wagon or a hitch or anything like that, you were pretty much tasked with fixing it yourself. And that's where this blacksmith shop came in. Basically, it's got 2 doors on it. Jordan was telling me if wagon needed to be worked on, it would roll in, they'd work on it, and then roll out the other side. Kind of like a garage, okay? And so if you had to repair a wheel, if you had to repair an axle, a L bracket or a U bracket for holding the axle onto the wagon, if you had to repair a seat or any number of hardware pieces, a lot of which are still around here, you'd have to basically fire this thing up, get going with it, and use a variety of different tools. If you take a look at these hammers over here, there's a number of different types. This is a ball peen hammer here. This is like a sledgehammer type thing, cross peen. And then there's a bunch of other ones. This is used for making holes in steel, because back in the day, before there was drills, you had to use something like this, okay? Now, if you really want to spend some time and effort, just try to drill a piece of steel with a drill like this. All right, you might spend all day doing that. It's just slightly better than a brace and a bit Okay, this is the brace. The bit came out here. You sit there and crank like that. Yeah, if you want to entertain yourself for about a week, try to drill a hole in a piece of steel with one of these. There's a couple of different old style drill presses here. This is one of them. There's another one over here behind you. This has got a power setup on it, so I guess back in the day when they actually got electricity here, they could put a belt on this and mount a motor up, and then it would turn under power. Otherwise, notice it has a backup handle here, so I can sit here and spin this and bring this down and drill. Now, if you wanted to drill a hole like that in that piece of steel, it would take you forever. This is more, well, you can see it's used for wood right here, and it works fairly well for that. Okay, another antique, real antique. Also, back in the day, they had a sharpening setup here. You'd sit here and take your axe or whatever you were going to sharpen and pedal that, and then grind the axe sharp with this. All right? Nowadays, we use electric tools. This thing works much better. Turns at 10,000 RPM, and it really cuts through things quickly. Also, we have a modern saw, which also does really well on steel. I'll show you here in a minute about how they used to have to drill holes or put holes in steel and or cut metal using the forge. My grandmother had one of these up on the ranch where she lived when I was a little kid. Had a lot of fun grinding my fingernails with that. Basically now we have a vise here, got another drill press over there, we have anvils here. These are used to form metal. You've got the horn on this end. You can put different things in there for making different shapes, like if you had to curve something. Also with this is a real nice tool here. This is called a swage block, where you can take and form metal into different shapes using this. Heat it up, smack it into these recessed areas, and or curve the pieces of material. All right. Anyway, Virgil, would you like to add something to this? I'm going to get this fired up, and then we'll start smacking some metal around.
Yeah, go ahead and start there. On the side of the forge there, they have a variety of tools to hold the metal when you're hammering on it. And a blacksmith would make one for every need he had. So there's more than a dozen different sizes there for holding the metal when you hammer on it.
Which is what we're going to do right now.
Now you mentioned some of these tools. Some of these are hammers, some of them you hammer on. For instance, this is a flattener. If you work on some metal that needs to be flattened out, you hold this on the metal and hit it. You don't hammer with it, you hammer on it. And by the same token, you mentioned making holes in metal. This is the one you'd use to make a hole.
Okay, go ahead.
And if you wanted the hole to be square, you move it all the way up there, so then you can use this to make a square hole. Again, you hammer on it. Now he showed one earlier where you put it in the Hardy hole there. Well, this is the other half of it. They had to make their own bolts. And so you could buy the square material. So you get a set of these for each size you want to make. This is about a 3/8 size. And so you have that piece that you fit in the Hardy hole. You put your square material while it's hot and put this on top. and hammer on it. You end up making a round piece of bolt for putting your wagon together. They had a way of cutting their own threads in metal by hand with a tool. But most of these others are hammers, and they come in different weights according to the job you're doing or the person doing it.
All right.
Now we have a lot of young kids come in here and hammer.
Okay, let me flip it.
They always want to pick a real heavy hammer. Too heavy for them to beat.
Okay,
You
good.
getting that? Okay. Now another thing to point out, when you pull out one of those drawers down there,
Yeah.
bottom row. Now that's a rat nest. But those are old license plates. Mostly 1937, 38.
There's actually a bird's nest in this one. Oh my god. There's chicks.
Yeah. The mother bird is.
Oh, there's live chicks. Nice.
The mother bird has been flying in and out, telling me what she thinks of me.
That one you pulled out first.
The first one is the red.
Mice. I pulled it out one time when the mother kept her head up there. I was showing it to the audience.
Some bearings. And Virgil, don't they use horse hooves for part of the process? They grind it up when they want to bond two pieces of metal together.
Well,
Mostly borax.
if you look up here, there should be a bone up there. Animal bone.
Uh-huh.
All
Yep.
your blacksmith shops would have bones like that. And they would grind it into a powder. And when before the modern welding system, they would overlap things, but they'd have to put this ground up bone in there to help it stick together when you hammered them. You get them really, really hot, up around 2,000 degrees, and then hammer them together and they stay glued or welded. So, for years they would use this animal bone powder, and if they had poor metal for their knives, it would stay sharp. They'd get the knife hot, sprinkle that bone powder on there, and let it cool down, and it stays hot or stays sharp longer. So you always had the bones. I usually kept one over there that I put over my face to tell the kids it was my Halloween mask. This tool over there hanging overhead.
This guy?
This is the scales for weighing the metal they would buy. You hang the metal on that, and we have some weights here somewhere to hang on the long left bar, and there's numbers on it.
Yep.
To tell you, we got a 1 pound weight and a 10 pound weight. So we keep that in there for demonstration purposes, but times they brought in wild pigs to weigh them on that. Now the one right above his head, shears, they came from a ship out in the mothball fleet. Those ships usually had a metal worker, not necessarily a blacksmith, on board, and that's for cutting sheet metal. The one next to it there, on his right, that was here in the ranch when we got here. Again, that's for cutting thin metal, or fairly thin anyway. But you got real good leverage on that for cutting.
Sometimes they'd use those to blank out nails too, right? Flip flopping back and forth.
Yeah.
They had to make their own nails back in the day. They had a lot of work building a building.
Now, would you move aside? There's a color chart there on the wall. you might get in position to get better. That tells us the color of the metal when it comes out of the fire, how hot it is. Now we operate mostly in that red.
So that's about 1200 degrees right there.
And it goes all the way up to bright yellow is where you hammer weld most metals together. Now each metal is a little different as far as what temperature to have them together.
All right. Another demonstration here. Remember I said how difficult it was to make a hole in a piece of metal with a drill when you had to use it by hand? So what they would do is they would use the blacksmith shop here. Okay. My assistant will come over here now. Punch a hole in this. Okay, hold it. Okay, go ahead. All right. See how it's starting to dent in there? Got to heat it back up a little bit.
Now on the blacksmith handle here, this one that they're using right there is called a hardy hole. That one is called a pritchett hole. And that's one he's demonstrating earlier. And this is the other half of it in order to make a round piece. So you'd buy a set like that for each size bolt you want to make. And that one that might come in.
All right, you ready?
Yep. They're going to make that hole bigger.
Okay.
Now one of the things,
Okay, but notice it's it's not really a clean cut, you might say. So we got to flatten it back out again. But that's how you had to drill holes.
at
Actually,
the same token, making holes in the wood, like making a wagon, rather than drilling so much, they would take a metal rod, make a sharp point, get it hot, and burn the hole in the wood. And burning the hole makes the hole stronger, whereas drilling tears the wood in the hole. So that was used quite a bit with the blacksmith making the tools to make the holes in the wagon.
that hole isn't exactly round, so we can round it out again. Okay. Okay. It's round now. All right. Don't set this on the wood bench on top. All right. Now, you can also form the metal. See if we can get this to work here. See how that twisted that? You can make ornamental iron work this way. Just heat it up a little bit, twist it around. gives you all kinds of design possibilities. All done because the metal is hot. The metal is not hot. Certain types of metal won't bend, okay? Now, these right here are files, okay? You cannot bend a file like that when it's cold, okay? Absolutely no way. Because what happens with these is that certain types of material are, especially a file which is designed to cut metal, this is very hard and brittle. So what happens, it's like a piece of glass, okay? Shattered, just like anything that was, well, like a piece of glass. So with the more advanced blacksmithing and so forth, the amount of heat that you put into the metal, the amount of time, how fast you cool it, and how you reheat it has everything to do with the characteristics of that metal, especially if you're making cutting tools like wood chisels, knives, that kind of stuff. This is a really good steel to use, but you have to treat it in a more sophisticated way. Otherwise, it doesn't come out very well.
Solano Land Trust has really paved the way for so many of our local residents in our community to be able to access nature in its most natural state. The Solano County Office of Education has a strong priority in a number of areas, including student wellness, equity, career pathways, certainly accessibility, and our partnership with the Solano Land Trust is a perfect match. Because I believe that our priorities certainly are aligned in how do we bring accessibility and accessible nature to all individuals in our local community.
Well, what's available here at Rush Ranch, if you've never been here, is an opportunity, one, to connect with nature. That's number one. Two, opportunities to bring your family out here. Doesn't matter if they have disabilities or not. It's a place where you can come and picnic, and an opportunity to learn about the land and the culture that is so rich here in Solano County.
The Solano County Office of Education, alongside with administrators, educators, health professionals, recognize the critical importance of social emotional well-being of young people. And we know that there's a correlation between social emotional well-being and being in nature. And the opportunity that Rush Ranch brings is education and what we ordinarily might call book learning to life.
Well, one of my first memories and my favorite is my son, David Williams. David was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy, and he was in a wheelchair. Unfortunately, my son David passed away in 2018. But my most favorable memory is him having this great smile on his face and so excited to have an opportunity to interact with horses and get to ride on the carriage. That was just the most memorable moment that I have, seeing that smile on his face and the excitement exuding from him. Rush Ranch has been and will always be a wonderful place and very dear to my heart and my family's heart for all that it has provided for my son the opportunity to do things that he would not necessarily been able to do.
We see the remarkable impact that the outdoors has on our students when they visit properties such as Rush Ranch, when they experience the fresh air, when they see and interact with the horses and the other animals, when they interact with the displays and the bones. Our students just light up. Community support for Solano Land Trust will provide transportation to farmland and open spaces, which helps to remove barriers that we talked about and connect our young people to untold opportunities. Your contributions will help develop more nature-based curriculum and help support students that may be going through social-emotional challenges. Your donation will inspire limitless potential and foster a love of the land that will live on through future generations. Finally, your contribution will help the Solano Land Trust protect what makes Solano County such a beautiful and remarkable place to live.